Hey everyone, my name's Hellhawk, or some of you probably know me better as Aeyix or many derivatives of that name, over on the Shadowlands. I kind of want to do something I've never done before. It's kind of like a pseudo podcast discussion style video, but basically I want to discuss the new changes that have been announced for the gearing system for 5.0, the upcoming expansion, Knights of the Eternal Throne. And so to get started, I think it's important to kind of discuss what we already know and some of the Datamined stuff. So to get started, I'm just going to go over some of the confirmed changes by Eric Musco over on the dev tracker from SWTOR's website. I'll have a link to the dev tracker below so you can see all this for yourself if you want. But so just to get started, basically all endgame tier gear will come from command crates, which are earned by leveling your command level with command experience points, which is done at level 70. Now, the max command level is still a work in progress, but you can still earn further command experience points at max command level in order to continue to unlock more crates. So it's basically a never-ending cycle of level up, get gear, level up, get gear, level up, get gear through your command experience system. Gear can still be crafted at comparable level, however it won't contain set bonuses, so that's kind of what makes the command gear right now, at least, the command experience gear a little bit higher, although how the min-maxing of which one's BIS also remains to be seen. Gear drops based on your advanced class, not your discipline. So if you're playing a assassin, you're going to see DPS gear, and you're going to see tank gear drop. If you're playing a sniper, you're just going to see DPS gear, and if you're playing a sage, you'll see heal or DPS gear drop. The gear will be bind on pickup, so whatever tune you earn it on, that's the one that has to use it. However, cosmetic items, so like outfits and such, those will be bind on equip, so you can actually probably sell them on the GTN, trade them amongst other people, or just send them to alts. The drops that you get are random, like the gear that you actually pick up will be random, and the rating will be determined by your command rank. So the higher your command rank, the higher quality gear that you're going to see usually. If for any reason, since the gear drops are random, you get duplicates or you get an item you don't want, let's say you're a DPS and you get tank gear and you have no interest in ever gearing as a tank, you can disintegrate the duplicates and unwanted items into command XP to get your crate faster, you get your next crate faster. So basically you can recoup XP from stuff that you don't want. The amount though is unknown, so it could be a loss, which would not be to most people's liking. Gear, however, is moddable, so mods and enhancements can be moved around for min-maxing, which is very important. And I presume this means legacy transfer of gear will still be possible. If legacy gear still works and you can put in legacy gear and still transfer it about, then it'll work just like how stuff is now, since token gear is bind on pickup now as well. But with all these gear changes, that means commendations and data crystals, they'll be going away. They're taken out of the game, and info on conversions will be released at a later date. So whether to start liquidating some of your crystals for like decorations and stuff or commendations, we don't know if it's better to just do that now or to wait for whatever the conversions are. But this also means that PvE and PvP gear is now shared, and expertise is being removed from the game. And your War Hero crystals, expertise crystals, will be converted into mastery. So for those of you that have expertise crystals unlocked in your collections, it shouldn't be an issue because they said that they will still remain unlocked. So it's just the stat will change, the crystal itself not so much. The whole issue with relics are still being sorted out, as you know now, or you may not know, but you're about to know. PvE relics will not activate inside PvP, but PvP relics work in either. So since all gear is the same, I'm assuming relics will just be the same. We'll see on that as well. Item rating does still matter for advantages, so if you have a higher rating gear, you will have a higher advantage in war zones, presuming same skills, same scenario. And the same can be said, I guess, for parsing and operations. The amount of DPS, the amount of HPS, the amount of mitigation you can do will improve based on having better rated gear. Warzone entry, because of no more expertise, will not be based on having your full 2018 expertise, but instead will be based on a Valor ranking. So presumably many of you that are PvPers will have a high Valor ranking on quite a few tunes, so you probably won't be locked out of ranked. But I'll discuss this further later part of the video. Operations will still have lockouts, even though they do not drop gear. They will still drop cosmetic awards such as mounts, pets, decorations. They didn't really say pets or decorations. They said decorations and Wings of the Architect. But I assume that means that the things that we currently see drop from them will still drop from them. You just won't see gear, and the lockouts will still be there. So you can't just farm the same operation over. Here's the big thing that's got a lot of people up in arms. As someone that myself currently preferred, this will hit me. Obviously, free-to-play and preferred players are unable to earn endgame gear as they will not have access to Galactic Command. So Galactic Command is something you only have access to, the ability to level it, as long as you are a active subscriber. Any gear that you've already earned, so let's say you go you're a subscriber and then you stop subscribing, you've shifted to free-to-play or preferred, any gear that you've already earned will not be removed from you, so you can still use it. I presume you will still need artifact authorization to wear it if you end up taking it off. I don't know how that whole works because I bought artifact a year ago, so I don't have to deal with this stuff. But you can still use crafted gear, so you won't be able to have like the BIS gear, but you could still have top tier rating gear that's crafted. And to sum it all up, harder content and group content are said to provide the fastest command leveling experience. So this means ranked war zones in Nightmare, which are being changed to Master, operations will still be the best way to level up the fastest. So group and harder content. So that's pretty much all the confirmed changes in a nutshell. It's kind of a lot to take in because it's a completely redone gearing system. I know gearing has been a little different for PvP long ago, and for what was tiering for PvE content as well. You used to have to go through flashpoints and then operations to get the normal tiering progression for gear, and then PvP gear, you used to have the Battle Master crates or something like that. That was before my time, so I don't know how it worked exactly. But my understanding was there was a little bit of RNG factor to it. So they're bringing back the RNG, completely removing the dichotomy between gear. It doesn't mean you only need one gear set though, because PvP and PvE you don't min-max the same way. But I'll discuss all this further. So the next thing I kind of want to discuss over is some of the Datamined info that we have, because I think even though it's subject to change, and it could be inaccurate or bugged right now, and so they just have incorrect information. But BioWare has a history of kind of sticking with Datamined info, ending up being what's in Endgame or on release. So, I mean, there are some slight changes, but this comes from Tor community, and this is from the PTS 6 update for 5.0. And so basically it's just the values of command XP that you'll get. And dailies and heroics will give you anywhere from 25 to 75. So the dailies mean, the old dailies back from level 50, 55. I don't know if that means Belsavis dailies, but it means the Black Hole, Section X, stuff like that, even Zeost, Yavin, Rishi. Heroics, obviously, the weekly heroics that you can do that are great for earning credits right now. So that's 25 to 75 command experience points for completing those. Flashpoints and Star Fortresses, only solo and tactical mode right now. I don't know why hard mode wouldn't be listed in that, but I would assume hard mode would also give you, completing it would give you command experience. Otherwise it would be kind of silly to say, oh, the hardest content gives you, the most points, but then the hardest content for flashpoints isn't available. I don't know, but that's 20 to 60 points for completing one of those. GSF, Galactic Starfighter, will give you 45 points for completing a match. Story chapters will give you 10 to 30 points, and I'm assuming that's based on the 3 difficulty tiers that they're incorporating. And that those story chapters also include KotET, so you can go back and replay old story chapters. That was something that they had mentioned, is the ability to replay story chapters as much as you want. Completing an operation will give you 40 points, and there's a little bit more into that I'll go into in a second. Completing uprisings, however, it only states in solo mode, which again, that's bizarre to me why that would be the case. You would think that they would encourage, like saying harder group content gives more points, that they would encourage tactical and hard mode uprisings to be points, but they're 10 to 30 points, so I'm assuming that's just a mistype on their point, and maybe 10 is solo, 20 is tactical, 30 is hard. I'm not 100% sure. Again, this is just Datamined info, but it still gives you a picture of what we might be seeing. In war zones, completing war zones is the final task, will give you 35 points, so it's a lot like Galactic Conquest in a way. The thing that you can do with guilds, and it's a little more legacy bound than this is, because this is per tune, remember, not per legacy. Basically, you complete stuff that's available in the game, that's been available in the game with the exception of the new chapters and the uprisings, and you get points, and you just grind them out. You increase your level, you get gear, and so that's kind of how this works. There's also command trophies. Forgot to add this in. Command trophies will drop or may drop from bosses, and the larger trophies will drop from hard mode and nightmare tier bosses. And they are listed as being 10 to 50 points for flashpoint bosses, 20 to 100 points for operations bosses, and 8 to 40 points for uprisings bosses, which make me think that uprisings, the bosses will be easier than flashpoints. With that being the case, if flashpoint bosses will give more points overall, 2 to 10 more points than uprisings, that makes me think uprisings aren't even as hard as flashpoints. But yeah, so if ops bosses are 20 to 100, I would assume 100's nightmare. So if you clear nightmare raid, you get 500 points plus 40 for completing the operation. So that would be 540 for a normal operation. Some operations have less bosses, some easier than others. This would lead some people to wonder, will KP and EV still be the go-to farms for points in this case? I guess one other thing to go over, somebody posted this today. This is actually posted by JediPD over on Reddit. I'll have the link below. And it's just some of the gear values, Datamined from the 7th update. Ultimate Exarch gear, as we currently have, is top tier gear. So it's 224, listed is like 44. So advanced armoring 44 type of thing. So what they released was there will be 3 more tiers. Eternal Command Mark 1, which is 230 gear, 45th on the numbering. Eternal Command Mark 2, which is 232, so only 2 rating higher, which is very, very small difference. And that's the 46th number. And then Aeyix Mark 1, which is 236, so that's a 4-point rating increase from the 2, 6 over the first level. Mind you, back in like level 55, level 60, there was a 6-point difference between gear, and right now at level 65, there's a 4-point difference between gear. So Aeyix is Mark 1, and that looks to be highest tier right now at 236 rating with item numbers 47. So you can craft all those versions of gear without the set bonuses. The naming system's the same. You just add a 1 before the number. So instead of Mark 1, it would be Mark 11. Instead of Mark 2, it'd be Mark 12. 230 schematics will be legacy bound from crates, so you can send them across to all your different crafters. While 232 and 236 gear look to be required to reverse engineer to get. So you get an item, you got to reverse engineer the armoring mod or enhancement to be able to craft it. Don't know what the percentages will be, but so it's kind of similar to how like hard mode gear is right now, where it's like, all right, here's a 220 item, now I gotta RE it and I can craft it. I guess the big difference is you can't craft nightmare gear, but this is kind of saying you can craft nightmare gear, you can craft PvP gear, which has been something that we haven't been able to do before. So that kind of covers basically the confirmed changes from BioWare, as well as the Datamined info that we're looking at. And I guess the next thing to do is kind of discuss it and see where this may bring the game, what we're looking at in the future for SWTOR right now with all this changes. So before I get into any discussion on the implications of this gearing change, a little about me so you know where my opinions are coming from. I just want to flat out get my bias out of the way. No, I'm not happy with this change, and overall I feel it's very bad for the game. So I started playing this game around 2.3, leveling with a friend. And the reason we got excited about it was, it's an MMO that's fully voiced, and it's Star Wars. And we played for a couple weeks, and then we kind of stopped, and then we came back a year later around 2.7 and actually fully leveled. He quit at max level, but I got involved in PvPing at max level. I enjoyed it very much, and about a month or two later, I started to get into progression rating, which was around 2.9. So I haven't been rating since then, up until about 4.0 dropped. People that I'd been raiding with for well over a year, we all decided to kind of stop doing progression raiding, and I decided to stock up on a bunch of unlocks, and I basically let my sub drop, and I became a preferred player after having been continuously subbed for a little over a year and a half, and even buying cartel coins during that time. So I still PvP'd though, by leeching off one of my friend's subs. There's a bug that lets you do that, but I ended up getting back into raiding around July. I subbed for 2 months, and since then I've been living off ops passes. So basically, I'm a hard mode nightmare raider. I do ranked and unranked PvP. But I started off not as an MMO player, but somebody that was just interested in the story aspect of the game. So I guess the next thing to kind of go into, now that I've kind of gotten who I am out of the way, is the financial aspect and maybe what the every player kind of sees in this. And so really, I think it's clear that the vast majority of the player base, this seems like a positive change to them. And I know some of you are ready to tear my head off, but let's kind of break this down and see why I say that. So hardcore PvPers and progression raiders, they're kind of a dying player base. We've seen it start to decline really back since Zeost, when the Monolith boss came out and such. And I even said to my friends right around KotET's release when 4.0, I was like, hey, you'll see in a few months when people's subs start to run out, that's when you'll start to see the player base really decline. And it did. Since the last year, the player base has fallen off significantly. And I mean, financially speaking, it doesn't really make sense for EA and BioWare to keep supporting this player base that's just kind of dropping. And, they're kind of supporting it separately when you have specific gear for those players, for operations, for PvP, for such. And PvP gear, is great for practically everything in the game right now, except hard mode and Nightmare Ops. But, most casual players, and note that I say most, not all, because, the statement, it's a blanket statement, but it's not, I'm not trying to make it blanket for, is that most casual players have no interest in running PvP just for the gear. I mean, I've known plenty of people, they say, like, man, I would love to get this gear, but God, I hate PvP so much, and the community and such, and stuff like that. And so, I mean, hard mode priority ops, and eventually Nightmare Ops, when they finally change that, it offers the best gear. But again, the casual player base, like, they lack the interest. I know plenty of people have no interest in ops or doing that group content, or they even lack the skill for doing that type of content, so they're not going to ever see the best gear. And this kind of leaves the casual players or the less skilled players locked out from the best gear of the game. And of course, for the dailies, the heroic story content that they do, gear around 208, which, would be top tier PvP gear, is pretty much all you need. And that doesn't stop people desiring the best gear, though. There's a reason EV and KP, which, a lot of raiders will tell you are the just most boring ops out there, are so popular when they're the priority ops. And it's because it's the best gate. It's the best access point for most people to get the best gear in the game. And balance issues aside, for some of the flashpoints out there, group content like story mode ops and tactical and hard mode flashpoints, they all have bolster, so gear really technically is not necessary for those. And it's kind of an obsolete thought to need gear. I mean, even level sync renders gear unnecessary for doing dailies over on the black hole or something like that, or heroics even. So what do you need gear for? Well, story chapters, kind of. I mean, it's super easy, so not really. And then the Eternal Championship, which, I mean, if you look on my channel, you'll see I completed the Eternal Championship in a guide video. I was unbuffed, I was unaugmented, and I was wearing unmoddable 200 rating gear with a super low level companion. So outside of hard mode and Nightmare Ops, or outside of PvP, gear isn't really necessary in the current state of the game. And the thing is, people still want gear, though. Diablo, Destiny, The Division, I think, are great examples that prove that people like getting better gear. It really kicks off the endorphins and a feeling of satisfaction. So with gearing for all content blocked behind a sub paywall, BioWare and EA are kind of introducing a way to motivate more active subscriptions with that model. And look, I'm not exactly the person that BioWare likes right now. I've been subbed for 2 months out of the 10 this year. I burn referral links every once in a long while as well, and I still PvP by grouping up with a sub, and still do ops with ops passes that I've stocked up on. I have all my account restrictions unlocked. I have 16 usable tunes. They're all unlocked as preferred, which default is 8. The only thing I lose out on really is my credits, and to be honest, I don't really care about them anymore. If I do sub, if I am on a preferred stuff, I'll get my spending spree going. But I got friends that are rich enough that are still subbed that don't really care. They're like, I'm not doing anything with my credits. All I gotta do is ask them. They're like, all right, sure, we'll give you this item here. So like the last thing I got was that new Exobor mount. So that was cool. So like, for example, me, I have no motivation to sub at the moment other than to have access to the new expansion. And BioWare's model for KotET wasn't exactly the best for their own success. If you think about it, in that all you gotta do is sub for a month right now. You pay $15 and you get everything, and that doesn't really make them a lot of money. If all you gotta do is sub for a month, and if more people do it. I mean, people encourage it on Reddit too. I recommend it as well, so it's, we're not helping BioWare in that case. So in the end, this new model lets the main player base, the majority, not the vocal minority that some of us probably are, but lets the main player base get the best gear, and lets them do it in any way they like. And if that means, playing the story over and over, so be it. If they like heroics, then good for them. Whatever someone prefers to do in this game, they can get the best gear for it. And I guess from a positive note, with multiple difficulty options now for the chapters and uprisings coming, it might mean that gear has an overall better purpose in the whole game in 5.0 than it does in 4.0. Meaning top gear isn't only necessary for hard mode Nightmare Ops and, PvP, but maybe necessary for hard mode chapters and uprising, maybe some other stuff planet side. It remains to be seen if tactical and hard mode flashpoints and story mode ops will still have bolster. If they do, it kind of, again, makes gear kind of obsolete for those. Of course, that's also dependent on how well BioWare balances. I don't know how that is. I guess the next thing to kind of talk to is to kind of get into the nitty gritty. How does this affect... let's start with the PvPer. How does this affect the PvPer? Well, first thing is, BioWare's last change to PvP gearing was actually really great. It was fantastic for getting people involved in it. You paid 20 to 25,000 comms would easily have you set up min-maxed and heal DPS gear, and it didn't take too long to do. Not to mention the legacy changes that allowed you to transfer comms back and forth. For example, right now I could easily gear out 3 or more DPS healers. I don't say tanks, because tanks there's a little bit of min-maxing that needs to be done more so than DPS healers, but I could gear out three ults right now if I really wanted to, and that's kind of cool. But this seems to be a reverse on that change, and if anything, unfortunately. So I find that the majority of hardcore PvPers mostly stick to PvPing. They may do the odd off task. I've had some people say, hey, come do heroics with me, and I tell them why, it's boring. But, do it anyway for credits. But they might do the odd off task in game, but they mostly just queue up for PvP. Not everybody, I'm just saying mostly from what I've seen from my experience. From the Datamined info we've seen so far, we see that PvP grants 35 command experience points, CXP. From what I've heard off the PTS, this is mainly rumors and secondhand knowledge, so this isn't confirmed, and this isn't confirmed at all, that there is an XP cap of 3,000 a week. So, which that will also net you your first 10 levels. Your first 10 pieces of gear, since you get a piece of gear with each level. If you actually get gear useful to your discipline, well, that's really RNG based. Now, I don't know if daily and weekly PvP missions will grant rewards or not, but it would take about 85.7 matches alone, if you take the 35 points and the 3,000, to hit that cap in a week, which is about 12.2 matches a day. Now, I mean, if a match takes between queuing and playing 20 minutes, I think that's a reasonable amount of time. If it takes about 20 minutes, that's 4 hours of PvPing a day. And that's a lot of matches to deal with, on top of the fact that there's the added in RNG and the hope of getting decent gear in return. And by decent gear, I mean one that's applicable to what your role is and has the stats that you need, or for not a duplicate piece. And not to mention, this is per tune. So if you want to start getting a set bonus for an alt, you have to play in that tune as well, just to transfer you can't just transfer your command XP at all. Although, since it is confirmed that gear is moddable, you could send it over to Legacy and just deal with the lack of a set bonus. That may not be what people want to hear, but unfortunately that might be the best alternative for alts. So I've seen a lot of people excited about the removal of expertise, and to be honest, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I like that PvP gear was not useful for harder ops, and that ops gear was not useful for PvP. It didn't let you just do one to just gear up for the other. To me, that seemed fair and kind of fun. There was something special about getting enough Warzone comms to buy the PvP gear you wanted, or to winning an ops piece and being like, yes, finally got my 224 offhand, or whatever. But the removal of the expertise requirement, in addition to Valor requirement for rank, though, is going to be a small bummer, I think. Like I said, I could fully gear an alt right now and bring it right into ranked. But in 5.0, if it is the same class, or let's say an opposite faction mirror, I have to grind out on ranked first before being able to pull it into ranked. Some may say this is good because it lets you build up experience on playing that class in a PvP environment. But however, remember I said if it was the same class, so maybe I had multiple assassins and my rating on one was unsavory, so I want a new one and start over. Or maybe it's a mirror and I'm going on a shadow. I already know how to play it, which will make it a lot more annoying to have to sit there and just grind out unranked just to be able to bring it back into rank. Now we don't know what the valor requirement would be. I would hope it's like nothing more than like 40 or something like that, which would be not too bad to get to. But still, it's an annoyance. In the end, I feel like the hardcore PvPers, they're not gonna be hit as hard as raiders in 5.0 with all these new changes. However, I'd still say they're hit pretty hard. I'm not trying to say, oh, you guys shouldn't worry, you have it nowhere near as bad as us. No, you definitely, it's definitely still no better. Just from some of the figures we've seen from the Datamined info and such, it just seems like top gear will take a significantly longer grind to get as a PvPer than it did before. And Musco did confirm on the dev tracker that higher rating gear does still give you an advantage in Warzones. So, you gotta grind out for that gear. I don't like the idea of going into ranked, let's say right now in all 204. Even though I have 2018 expertise, it's like, no, I have to have full 208 BIS min-max gear. Otherwise, it's not right for me. And, the way they make it seem is that ranked will give you more command points. Well, that encourages going into ranked than with subpar gear. And I don't like that thought and such, but I don't know. Fortunately, though, going back to the whole paywall thing, many PvPers are currently subs, from what I've seen. At least those that queue on their own or do solo ranked, because you cannot solo queue unless you have an ops pass, and you can't queue solo ranked at all unless you're a sub. Some may not necessarily need to be sub though. These are the people, maybe they do group ranked only, or they just do regs and they group up like me with a friend that's subbed. But this plan will basically kill that leech method, that bug that you can use where you can queue up for a war zone if somebody else queues up. Even though it says this person cannot queue, they'll still get the pop. It may even kill war zone passes, because if you're not geared, why do you want to do war zones? You'll just get your ass kicked. Although I can't really see why many PvPers would be interested in 5.0 anyway, unless they're interested in the story, the KotET story, or the class changes, because let's be honest, no new maps, no new game modes have been announced. And we've seen one new unranked map and one new arena in like 2 years, I think. I could be wrong. Maybe it's been longer. I know I get bored of PvP quite quickly now, just because it's like, oh my gosh, it's the same map, same game over. And I don't exactly like the new map at all. I'm not a fan of Odessa improving. So it's not exactly a good track record on BioWare's part to make PvPers want to keep subbing. I could easily see plenty of what dwindling ranked community is left leaving, because they don't exactly want to grind out an insane amount just to have decent gear on multiple tunes, let alone even one tune. And BioWare's already shown they don't exactly care about ranked as much anyway, as the rewards for this season are even lesser than the prior season. But I mean, rewards haven't even been that great since season 3, back when they actually had gear as a potential reward too. Now that they've gotten rid of the weapons, the only thing left to remove from the rewards for the following season would be the mount. But just imagine, I guess, just to paint a picture to sum up the PvP talk, just imagine you are in full 236 BIS, except you're missing 2 set pieces, which would mean you only have 5 out of 6 necessary, so you're missing that 6-piece set bonus. And yet, every time you get a new command crate, you just can never get that 6 set bonus piece. That heal set of yours, you're a healer, keeps ending up DPS, or some other gear piece you already have. 20 crates later, you still don't have it. That sounds awful. So I guess now that I've covered PvP, I kind of want to discuss progression rate. And I think this is where it really gets hurt. Maybe part of it's because that's what I do majority of the time now. I do it more than PvPing. But let me preface this with just RIP SWTOR 5.0. That's a common feeling right now amongst many raiders. Now I know some of the rumors have been spreading that BioWare will be focusing back on group content come February, March of next year. But that's still months away, and we don't even know if that will be operations or not. So right now, all we can assume is that current operations will be bumped again. Basically, their third iteration. I mean, they were either available at level 50 or 55, now 65, and then coming up 70. And uprisings are coming, which so far sound to be nothing more than Flashpoint-like, because, 4 people, 3 difficulty modes, 3 to 4 bosses, sounds like a Flashpoint to me. And remember what I said earlier, they offer less CXP per boss than Flashpoints do, so if anything, they sound like they're easier. But so any progression rating group at 5.0's release will be doing all the same operations again, basically. I mean, gearing, however, will be very different, obviously. I mean, that's what this whole discussion's about. Now, many raid groups, they consist of a few different types of players. There's like 3 archetypical players. There's the do-it-all person that plays a bit of everything, and that's what I used to be. And there's the log-in occasionally person that may log in and do something on a non-raid night, like pug raids or PvP or something like that. Maybe they like flashpoints, I don't know. And that's what I currently am. I've been doing a lot of pug raiding basically, and I PvP off and on. And then there's the final person, which we all know all too well, and that's the raid logger, the person who logs in for progression raiding only. Now, person 1 and 2 would get a decent amount of gear on their own time, while person 3, they're pretty easy to gear up in a night or two. I mean, if you raid for 2 hours, you can go through 2 hard mode operations and boom, they got 10 pieces of gear. So that's really easy to do during scheduled raid times, and this allowed for a progression team to basically move right into progressing within the first month of an expansion. I mean, and try to clear the harder tier bosses, because you got those, those 2 guys that are doing a bunch of story modes during the week, maybe with other people from their own raid group, their guild. That raid logger logs in, it's like, oh, we only have to gear up 2 or 3 people, so we'll just get you guys your gear, this week, next week, and then we can get right into going into the harder, into hard mode or whatever. However, this new system will definitely require significantly more effort for gearing and prevent teams from just gearing up someone's ult in a night. I mean, you have to grind out to get gear, and really you have to do more than just ops to get gear in any decent pace. Based on the Datamined info that I discussed earlier, if 3,000 is the weekly cap, and you would get your first 10 pieces of gear within that first week because you'll get your first 10 levels, then you'd have to do, wait for it, 21.4 story mode operations in a week just to get started with gearing. That's worse odds than right now, because right now, if the common raid, it's a 5 and 8 chance of winning something, right? 5 bosses, 8 people, 5 and 8 chance of winning something. That 21.4 to hit the cap, though, and get 10 pieces, that's equivalent to 3.7 and 8 odds, which are way worse. That's 1.3 out of 8 worse than what it is currently. That would suck. Now, mind you, as you level your command level, it takes longer to level up, so you will get less gear frequently as you gain more command XP, because it's, what used to take maybe 200 points to level up, now it takes, maybe 500, so you're going to have to do a significantly more amount of work just to get another piece of gear. Plus side is at that point you're probably getting better quality gear. Now throw in the RNG factor and it just gets uglier. So let's say you're a power tech DPS, for example, and you keep getting tank pieces, or the same DPS pieces. Let's say you get your 5th piece of bracers. Oh man, that must be exciting. You won't exactly be too pleased with all that time spent, and that's all you get. And it's quite the contrast to being able to run into the operation that offers the gear you need, as well as to turn in your token for the proper role you need. So to be able to say, hey, I need a main hand. EV drops that main hand. I'm going to go into EV. Win that main hand and be like, all right, I'm going to turn that in for the DPS main. And that's nice to be able to do. Or, maybe you go in with your better geared tune. You got some other tune that's locked down. You're like, well, I wanted the main hand, and I got it on this tune who already has it, but now I can go give that to, my healer alt. And that was kind of nice to do too. But you can't do that because you're only going to get geared to for your advanced class that you're leveling with now. If you want to gear an alt, you get to do it all again. So it's a lot of grinding. And, if you mix in that RNG factor, RNG gear on gear is just, to me, it's awful. And it's one reason why myself and a lot of friends that I played with on the Division, we all left shortly after 1.2 released. Now you all might be thinking, well, don't do story mode, do hard mode and nightmare since they offer better command experience. And, what I say is, well, this is where the whole progression thing really becomes problematic. If you need to gear to complete hard mode nightmare content, then you have to deal with the long story mode grind, just to hope to get better gear that will let you do the higher tiers. Now, if for some reason hard mode and nightmare are actually easy enough that you can do it with your current, let's say, 224 gear, then BioWare's basically failed then, putting purpose into trying to grind out for better gear, because it's like, well, you actually don't need the gear, so just go do your progression, kill it, and you're done playing. But let's take a step back. Let's go back in time, back to where I was talking about the different types of players. With this long gear grind, and it being a personal grind, that raid logger is becoming a problem to the group's progression. Now, the raid group needs to spend time carrying the individual through ops, not once or twice like you would. It's like, alright, we bring them through 2 ops, get them 10 pieces of gear right. But a whole lot more times, a heck of a lot of times, just to get the command XP. And based on that Datamined info, if that means carrying someone through a nightmare raid, which, mind you, is kind of pointless when you think about it from a gearing perspective, it's like, alright, you're doing nightmare so that you can get this guy enough gear to do nightmare, but if you're already able to kill it with him with nightmare, you don't exactly need the gear. So, there's no more progression to do from that point. So let's say you were carrying them through nightmare, though, to level out their command experience level. You would have to do 5.5 nightmare raids based on the Datamined info to hit your weekly cap. It's a lot of nightmare raids, and that's for 10 pieces of gear. You're carrying somebody through 5.5 nightmare raids, and they get 10 pieces of gear. Mind you, if that was a alt or new tune or somebody that they haven't leveled yet, that's low rating gear too because of the low command level. So not only will progression for the group be delayed since player types 1 and 2, the do everything person and the log in for pugging person, will already take longer just to grind for gear under the new system, but player type 3, the raid logger, will significantly halt the progression of the group as raid nights are spent just grinding for people's command levels and not actually working on progression. Mix in the whole have to be sub to progress your command level, and ops passes are rendered obsolete unless you've already geared. And maybe then, if you are already geared, you might let your sub fall and use ops passes for progression, assuming you've somehow gotten a reasonable amount of gear necessary for what your group is progressing. I mean, if you manage to get full 236 BIS gear on that tune, and you don't play any other tunes, or you have other tunes that are all set, then you really don't care about command XP anymore if you don't need any more gear. Then you might let your sub drop. Most raiders I know, both their subbed or preferred status, and they're pretty aggravated or bummed out about these changes, and I think many agree that these changes will nearly kill what's left of progression rating in SWTOR, and it probably doesn't help that this will be some people's third times doing the same bosses, and we don't even know if we'll ever see new operations ever again, so the motivation to continue is becoming ever increasingly difficult. I guess one final note, kind of done with the PvE discussion, kind of move on from that, go back to the financial discussion. I guess one final note before I conclude is it's clear BioWare and EA want to change up the free-to-play model for this game, especially with how much the player base has shrunk in the past year. Pure free-to-play, I mean, the way it currently is it's the vanilla game. You can play the stories and that's it, and to be honest, for free-to-play, that's a lot of nice free content. The ever-increasing preferred population, such as people like myself, especially those that are smartly taking advantage of the game to continue to play it, like me, for the whole year, with minimal continued investment, if really any at all, it's not exactly in BioWare's interest to let us continue going that way. And BioWare, EA probably see that segment's growth as strongly hurting their potential profits, and it's not like they're exactly doing a significant return of investment into the game, other than, paying for super expensive commissions on Blur trailers. Not that the trailer was bad. I love the trailer. It's beautiful, but it's a shame. It's like, man, that costs so much, and that money could have gone to other places. Advertising's important, but I can't fault them for making endgame gearing require an active subscription. I mean, you can't play WoW past level 20 without being an active subscriber. But I guess it comes as more of a shock to current player base in SWTOR because it's something that we've been used to for the past few years. It's like, all right, I pay for the expansion, maybe I sub for a couple months, do what I need, stock up on some stuff that I can use while I'm preferred, and play preferred. But now the way this is, I mean, you can it's still technically stock up. You got to stock up on gear, grinding. Yeah, I guess it's just more of it's harder to take in because we're so used to a certain way the game was, and now it's going to be very different. And I kind of wonder if they'll remove the operations, the war zones, the starship passes from the game altogether, and instead add in something like a command pass that lets you have a week of gaining command XP on that particular character, since the ops warzone passes and such, they're actually per character, not per account, unfortunately. Yeah, so that's kind of the last thing I want to say about the whole free-to-play model change, but I guess to conclude, sum everything up, everything I've gone over. It looks like the grind overall will be much longer for gearing. Throw in the added-in RNG factor, and doesn't exactly make this new grind any easier to acclimate to. And I've talked with many of my PvP friends and many of the progression groups that I'm in, and most of us seem to have a consensus on the issue, and that we're going to give 5.0 a try, and we'll give BioWare a chance to prove something to us to see if it's worth staying. Maybe they will come out with new ops after all, a few months post-expansion release, but right now we're all very skeptical. And we don't want to flat out quit. It's hard after all this time that we've invested in the game for all these years, the friendships we've had, but it's becoming increasingly difficult to find a good reason to keep playing. I guess I'll leave you all with that.